welcome to our first Chris Rich podcast. And it's going to be a real estate podcast. And, there's a lot of people ask different questions about how do you can really wholesale this whole real estate or fix and upper and how do we finance things. So we always struggle. I give people advice. But today, we are really lucky that we have Galli Lama with us. It's Galli
Okay.
Lama. It's not Dalai Lama, it's Galli Lama. And Chris is really one of the top mortgage broker and financer. He is himself a developer. So instead of going detail into our bios, people can just look up our bio. But basically, this is Chris Galli. He's in Florida. I'm in Massachusetts. And Chris really does a fantastic job if you really need any kind of mortgage. But more than that, Chris really knows the market. And here we are going to share our experiences for those people who want to be real estate investor. And our focus today is going to be if you want to get into the market, and especially you have idea, vision, how do you execute that vision? Where do you get the financing? And how do you really make this a journey as a good journey for you, a successful one, so that you can turn these ideas into execution. So welcome to our first podcast, Rich, Chris.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Rich. It's an honor to be on the podcast with you. With your experience over 20 years in developing and all that, you come with a lot of wealth, not just on the residential side, but you're building, huge complexes and developments. So I think this can add so much value to the people that are listening, that are interested in possibly just starting, even if it's at the lower level, just start house hacking or just getting their feet wet, so to speak.
Well, thank you, Chris. So we didn't even go too much detail into buyers and this and that. Those are not that important. What's important is that here we have an idea, and how do we really execute the idea? So the
Correct.
first of all, there are various aspects of real estate. Like I say, the real estate value chain. Somebody could just buy a raw land, add a value, or create value and sell it. And there are again some subset of that. Then somebody can buy a house and fix it up and then rent it, hold it, or sell it. Or somebody can just buy a land and then develop it. Somebody can buy a land and actually build homes. There is various aspects. Or somebody could just buy a whole apartment building or any commercial plaza or even hotel, motel. We'll go through all those. But today, let's focus on if you want to wholesaling the raw land. That is the first piece. Okay. Because a lot of people advertise over there, okay, well, you want to be a real estate investor and we'll make you in 90 days, we'll give you millions of subscribers and this and that. And then they actually become YouTubers. They don't know nothing about real estate. So our focus is going to be giving back to the society, giving back to the community. That whatever Chris and Rich knows, can we really help our other fellows who want to be real estate investors so they don't go into the trap and on the name of creating wealth, they may be losing their own whatever wealth they have. Okay.
Correct.
So here's what we are going to do. We're going to say, first of all, if you want to wholesale the land, the term wholesaling, what does wholesaling mean? Wholesaling, in my humble opinion, means is that basically you bought a piece of property or land and now you want to really sell it as soon as possible and make money. That's really in the short of a lot of other definitions. That's really what people calling wholesaling. What
Yep.
do you think, Chris?
I think so. For a quick example of that, I bought a property here in Sarasota. The house that was on it was a small 1950s, like mid-century type style home. And I bought the house. I think we're in it for 320. Now, even if I finished the house, we got an after repair value of the property, and I think it was around 500,000. However, there was a lot, the same exact lot, one block over on the same spot as mine was, like one house from the ocean on a dead end road. It was just clear land. The lot alone sold for 700,000. So,
Wow.
right? So I'm thinking, why the heck wouldn't I just spend 10 grand and knock this house down? And just put the lot for sale rather than putting all the sweat equity, the work into the house, and then turning around either A, selling it or holding it as an investment property. But those are the things that you want to kind of look at when you're buying. You might have a piece actually real estate on that property, a building or a structure, that maybe it makes sense to take the down and resell the land because it's a dilapidated building or whatnot. So you really got to look at all different stages at what you're buying and see where those opportunities are within every purchase, whether it's just that land purchase where you're going to look to long-term develop or turn around and sell it because you grabbed it for such a good price, and just looking at what that cap rate is.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, you brought a very good example. So here, I'm going to just pose a simple hypothetical example that somebody really want to just do land wholesaling. So we will talk about the rest of the properties, but we just say somebody want to just do land wholesaling. So, well, there are definitely ways to look at the land, and one should really have different aspects. For example, where the land exists, what there is accessibility to the land, there are some roads or there are some highways, or what kind of utilities do you have, all those. I mean, I'm sure somebody will look at all those things before buying the land. And then on top of it, if somebody has some know-how of that zoning district, and some zoning bylaws, because every town has different zoning bylaws. Because you don't want to buy a land and you're going to say that, okay, well, you bought a piece of property, it is 100 acres, and I only bought it for $100,000. But you know what? If you really have like a landlocked piece,
Yeah, it's useless.
cannot really be accessed, well, good luck for your 100 acres. I have seen many situations where people have hundreds of acres, but they're landlocked. Landlocked means that there is no access to any road. The people have property all around it, and you don't even have any sort of frontage. What are you going to do with that 100 acres?
Nothing.
You can't even build a graveyard on it. So
So,
I
Rich, tell people how you would what you do for that due diligence process. I think that would be so helpful. Is like you how do you, when you identify the land, because you see these good deals that come up. What are those steps that you take when you're looking at it?
Very good. Thank you, Chris. That's exactly what I think I was highlighting. But reality is the first step you have to see is that is the property you are looking at has good access and good frontage. That's number one. And number two, and again, frontage dictates how you can subdivide that property. I bought a property, it was 20 acres, and it has, believe it or not, 1,200 feet of frontage. So that's great, a 1,200 feet of frontage. But then when I come to find out that street is basically a paper road. Now, I did a little more due diligence. I said, okay, part of it's a paper road. Does it have some paper road that can be developed? Paper road means it exists on town's papers, but it's not developed. So then I actually worked with the town, and I realized that if I want to invest in that, portion of that road could be developed, but I have to invest in that. So that means if I'm buying a land for $1 million, and if I want to develop 1,000 feet of road, it could cost up to $2,000 per foot to develop that road. So development means that you have to put utilities, and then you have to see, does it have utilities close to it?
Or access?
And then access. And access is one thing, and then utilities access, that if you have water, you have sewer. If you don't have sewer, a lot of times you don't have sewer, then you have to do a perk test. That is it going to have a good perk test? Mean, can it percolate? So there is a process. You hire a surveyor, you hire an engineer, and you do the perk testing. That you gonna see that whether that is going to pass that test. If the water can seep, and you can do the septic. Now you have to see. You may have 100 acres, but you may be only perking 5 acres of it. Then in Northeast, one of the biggest problem is wetland and wetland bylaws. Now, you may not have those issues in Texas and Florida and other places, but in Northeast, it's a big issue. So I had a piece of land which was 20 acres, but then it has a stream, and I went to talk to the owner, and the owner said, it's a beautiful property. Suddenly, this good property. Oh, by the way, let me show you the real gem. I said, okay. It took me halfway through the property, and he showed me the stream. He said, look at how beautiful the stream is. I said, oh, that's great. And then when I looked into it in detail, it was called as a riverfront, even though it was a small stream. But if it's called out as a riverfront, that means you cannot build 200 feet on each side of
On
it.
each side, yeah.
200 feet. So if you have 200 feet on each side, you can't build. Good luck to you. You
Yeah.
know. So these are all those things you have to really know before you buy the land.
So
But go
So,
ahead,
so
Chris.
Rich, on that point, and it sounds like what we want people to know is that there's an upfront. You have to make a really upfront investment on doing your due diligence, and you have to be prepared to pay somebody to do some studies if you need to, right? Like on that part of it. So, I mean, some of the stuff from experience, you know now, because you know and you can identify it. But when you first started, you probably had to put a little bit of equity into that, finding out these answers or research and stuff like that. So I think you really dive in a little bit into that piece of it, what people have to do in order at first, so they're not going jumping in and then losing their shirt on the first time.
Very good, Chris. So in that due diligence process, if you want to really be in the land business, you definitely either you need to be an engineer and a person who understands the bylaws yourself, or you need to have access of one.
Yeah.
Okay, you cannot just think of that you're going to go to the town engineering and they're going to tell you all that. They don't have that kind of time, or may not even have all that due diligence. But most importantly, they do not take that risk. They say that, yeah, we can give you some basic information, but honestly, if you keep going to them and asking them these questions, they're going to get really very tired of you. And instead of helping you, they really are not going to be in the business of doing that. So the best thing, these are the same people you're going to need help from in the long run. You're
Yeah.
going to need the approval from. So it's very, very important that you have access of an engineer who is called a land engineer, a civil engineer. Okay, there are a lot of engineering firms. Whether you like it or not, you need to have some initial investment. I'll give you another quick example. Somebody actually wanted to build a graveyard, and they found a very cheap land, and that land was surrounded by all residential, and then it has a very small access, and access required lots of road development. And they talked to me, and it was a community service, and they wanted to build a private graveyard for a certain ethnic community. So they like to have their own graveyard instead of using a public graveyard. I said, okay. I looked into it. Very quickly, I told them, don't do it. They said, are you crazy? This is like 50 acres and we can get it for $50,000. It's very cheap. I said, well, there are three issues I see. Number one, it's in the middle of residence, and the residence is going to really fight you hard not to build a graveyard there. Even though it's a flexible, you can build by right, but the neighborhood is going to go crazy. Number one. Number two, it does not have a direct access, and you're going to spend millions of dollars building road. Even if you build a dirt road, you think it's a $50,000 land, but you don't see what you're going to put on top of it. And then they said, no, 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 you're just exaggerating. We just need to do some due diligence. And they talked to an engineer, and the engineer gave them $300,000 bill to do all the due diligence and engineering. I said, wait a minute. No, it's a good engineer. I like that engineer. In the long run, I end up hiring him for my other project. But that's not his forte. He's not the developer. Developer and engineer is two different things. You need a developer mind and you need engineering mind. Okay?
Right.
Because I'm thinking from the money point of view, and he's thinking, the job point of view, right?
You can maybe do
So
it, but is it going to produce your ROI that you need, your return on investment? At the end of the day, yeah, you could do anything, but if you're going to lose money and bleed money doing it,
yeah,
then it doesn't make sense as a developer's thinking.
they were ready to spend $300,000. I told them, hold on, wait a minute. I said, you are a nonprofit, and you're going to spend all that money. And yes, your community wants this graveyard, but please, for God's sake, $300,000 is going to be total waste if you don't do some basic understanding cheap. They said, how do we do it? I said, well, let me send, first of all, a wetland expert and see, what is the wetland issue. And then we do a very basic test to see that what is the water table. So because I had a gut feeling that this was a high water table zone.
Yeah, if you dig too deep,
Yeah, so what happens is that they will be building graves really in the water.
yeah,
So what I just by spending $5,000, Chris, $5,000 instead not 300,000, I actually did some basic testing. I sent my wetland scientist over there, and then I sent my surveyor there, somebody who basically do a basic test to tell me what the water table was. And guess what? Number one, the water table was very high, and you needed literally 2 to 5 feet of fill in all this 50 acres and all the land you were going to
On
use
top.
on top, because otherwise you can't dig because the water table was very high. Can you imagine just for a graveyard, which people say, hey, no big deal, there's no sewer needed, there's no septic needed, there's no nothing needed, there's no drainage needed. But reality, think of it, you are in the middle of residence all around you. You have to build that road, and now you have to bring 2 to 5 feet of fill
On
from
50
somewhere.
acres. Hundreds
That
of
would
thousands.
be millions of dollars,
Yeah.
millions of dollars.
Millions.
And believe it or not, they thanked me at the end, and they had their whole community meeting. And I was a bad cop in the beginning because I was really breaking their heart
But you were the
that you
savior
can't
at
do
the end. You saved them.
it. Right.
I mean,
So
think
these
about.
are all the
I mean, you say that. I mean, if you spend $1 million, even $1 million, on doing this project, which it would be millions, how many burials, how many grave sites do you gotta? I mean, you gotta have a 200, 300 deaths before you even break even. That could take you
plus-
20,
no, no,
10
many,
years.
many more.
Yeah.
Many more,
This is-
many more. It was very expensive. And then they end up actually going to an existing graveyard in a town, and that town needed a money, and they're looking to sell graves to anybody, a portion. And they had to buy that, and honestly, that worked out beautiful.
And they could probably be profitable. I mean, not that that's what they look at the end of the day, right? I mean,
No, they didn't need to be profitable, but they need to be cost effective.
okay.
So they didn't.
All right.
So they didn't have to spend anything up front. See, for all that land, they had to generate money, right?
Yeah.
They need to get donations, but now they don't need to get any donations at all. Whoever needs it can get it, and also it has maintenance, it has accessibility, it has everything. They didn't have to spend a single penny on development.
That's
You know,
beautiful.
I didn't do that for them. That necessitated them when they lost the other deal because what I taught them.
So, and did you do that? And that's my question for you because of the value that you bring to anybody in this space because of your experience. Like as a consultant, did you just do that out of the goodness of your heart, or you know what I mean? Or did they hire you because they should hire someone like you, especially if you're looking to buy something that's going to cost an extensive amount of money? What does that look like for somebody to find somebody even like you?
This is a very nice thought, but to be honest, we all have different aspirations and different time of our life.
Correct.
My aspiration at this point is not to be somebody's consultant and make, even though you can make good money for that.
Yeah.
But honestly, if we're doing this podcast, are you getting paid for this?
No, it's just adding value, and that's what I love. Is like how can I find the most successful people in life through my journey, my short journey here is the most successful people are the ones that want to help most of the time. I mean, I've had a lot of mentors in my life that I would ask questions that are very successful, and they want to give you just like what we're doing here, right? They want to give you
Right.
the information and share the information because it's just a feel good thing when you give back, right? For one, and it's just kind of the right thing to do. So I 100% agree with you. But it was nice that
So
somebody found you to be there for them because they could have been in a nightmare. They could have walked into a
100%
nightmare.
agreed. Honestly, that was a nonprofit who I work with. I go to that church and all that. And basically, but I would probably do this for any nonprofit because I will hate to see a nonprofit losing millions of dollars of people's money. This is exactly how nonprofit go bankrupt and nonprofit get very bad name. And honestly, this was a big saving, big saving, you know. But that's God's willing because God has created us with all different type of missions, and I'm so happy that I was able to help. But now go to profit side. Now, if somebody says, "Oh, because a lot of time people come to me, Chris, and they will ask me these questions." Now, I don't have unlimited amount of time, and I don't want to give a wrong idea. If you are my friend, or if I do this podcast, I do YouTube, how many people send me message through YouTube, oh, can you tell me this, can you tell me that, or call me. And they don't even put comments on YouTube. They would actually call me and take time. I will help them and maybe make another video for those questions. But to be honest, I do not want to be people's personal consultant because then I would not be able to do my own developments.
Do your own
You know?
developments, correct?
So I am here giving you a basic advice, Now, if you watch my videos, you will get a very good idea that where to go to catch the fish
Yeah.
or what tools to use to catch the fish. But I do not catch the fish for you.
And that, but
I
that's what
don't
people
catch the fish
need.
for you.
There's a lot of, like you mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of fluff. You go on here, you see a lot of fluff and people giving advice, but it's really superficial, top layer. Like it's really
Yeah.
kind of getting into those weeds, what we're kind of talking about today, those layers. And really people have to open their minds and be like, okay, these are things I have to think about because we want to, if people are watching this, we want to set them up to win at the end of the day because it's useless if we just kind of throw high level stuff out there that just kind of touches the surface level where you're diving deep into from your experience, which is
No,
no value.
yeah,
There's no
I
number.
think I want to deep into your experience now. So I can give you many other examples that people bought 10-acre land for a school which was on the ledge, and they spent $1 million cutting that ledge, and they couldn't even come to the level, and then they end up giving it away. They bought the land for 500,000. They put $1 million on top of it, and they end up giving it away. So it's very, very important to have caution. But I do not want to spend all of our time on this. I want to take a little time to say, look, if somebody bought a piece of land and they want to buy that piece of land, whether they, and let's say they did their due diligence, now there are two ways to do it. One, a lot of time people say wholesaling, wholesaling. They actually just hold the papers, like they would put a 5% deposit,
Correct.
and then they will hold the paper, and then in that 30 at 60 and 90 days, and I hope people put contingencies when they hold the paper. Because especially when you're buying a land, you should put a due diligence contingency, and people do that.
Yeah.
Let's say if somebody done that, and now somebody needs money to close it, right?
Yeah.
So let's suppose all those contingencies are met, like they have done the perk testing, they have done the water table, they have looked at the wetland, they have done all those things. And now they say, you know what, there is the land, I want to buy for 100,000, I already paid 5,000. Now they have two choices. Choice number one, that they go and they put 95,000 more and buy it. And then they do the next step. Or they actually say, you know what, I need to get that 95,000 from somebody because I don't have that money. They would find another buyer who would pay them more than 95,000 and sell the
More.
papers. And that's also called wholesaling. Even though it's dangerous, I don't do that and I don't encourage people, but some people do want to do that. Now, if they want to find that $95,000, Chris, now you are the top mortgage guy. Tell me it's raw land. We're not talking about houses. We will be talking about the houses. We're talking fixer upper later. Right now, we're talking about the raw land. If you have the raw land and you hold the paper for 5,000 and you need 95,000, where do you go?
Well, you find there's so many different hard money type investors out there that you can go to with different terms. What I've found a lot of times is if you're new to the game, it's going to be a higher risk, right? So these investors, these guys want a little bit more money on the front end. So you might have to put down the 20% or so and then pay, a substantial amount of points in the beginning. But that's the price of getting started, right? Or else, what I always tell people too is if you're just getting started, you see this, maybe you partner with somebody who's done it before to kind of take your risk layers out of it. So when you're going to these investors with your ideas or you're creating your pro forma and your executive summary and you're bringing it to them as what you're going to do, if they're going to help you partner with you in a sense and give you that cash, you can mitigate that risk and put less money down. But I've seen it as much as 10% down minimum. And then
Even for land,
I have
doesn't the land require more?
I have one bank that will only require specifically to this market here in Florida. They take 10% for land.
So you have a bank because there is somebody who have no experience before, but they put 10% down and they bring the deal to you. You would be able to find a bank for them. Of course, it's going to be higher interest rate, but you're going to be able to find either a private equity or a bank who can then provide the rest of the money.
Yes.
Correct?
And then again, it depends on the type of strategy you're looking at as well. So if you're looking at a creative land strategy with commercial, those terms are going to be much different than if you're doing it as far as like a residential or maybe a multi plex property as well that's going to be residential. So those are the things that you want to talk about up front. What do you plan on doing with that land? Where is it zoned? I mean, you're going to look at the zoning. You're going to look at what you can do with it, because you don't want to buy the wrong land as well. And that comes with your due diligence process, and the bank's going to ask you for that as well. And the bank will ask you. Private investors are they're charging a little bit more, and you're putting yourself on the hook for a little bit more money, so there might be a little bit more flexibility. But again, you're looking at paying points on the front end. You're looking at putting a substantial amount down, and then you're looking at usually what you'll see is interest only for a term, maybe a 6-month term where you're paying interest only on that payment. So kind of frees up a little bit of your capital on that sense. But that's really what you're looking at when you're doing almost any of these loans, whether it's land or a permanent building that's on the land.
So we're getting really pretty close to the end of today's podcast, but I just want to ask you a couple of more questions in the same regards, which really go into your alley because you're a Galli Lama. Let me ask you, Chris, when you say lots of points and lots of interest rate, in this example, the example I gave, because today we are going to focus on land, and then maybe next time, tomorrow, we'll focus on, fixer upper and other things, and then I'll ask you those questions. But for this type of a little bit riskier deal, where you only have land and you're only paying 10%, because to be honest, I don't know many banks here that would deal with the land only financing. They like to finance the construction side, not the land
Right.
side.
Yeah.
But you're saying that you have some people who would do the land side financing. What kind of rate are you talking about?
Their rate was, this bank is Bank OZK down here. They're out of the Midwest, but they have some branches here in Florida. But they offer the 10% down, and that the rate is under 10%, which is extremely great rate for that loan. So
Yeah.
since they're like
So when you say under 10%, is it 8 to 10, 7 to 10,
It,
6 to
I think it's more or less 8 to 10% from
8 to 10?
what I've seen. So it's 8 on the higher end. But again, to your point, there's not many people out there that are going to give you 10% down on land.
Yeah.
Again, they're community
I
banks.
haven't seen any. I have seen you gotta buy the land and then they will give you money for the construction.
Correct.
But I honestly, it's very, very difficult. And all power to you if you can get it. That's great. That's the reason you are Galli Lama. But I'm glad. That's good learning for me. But then you are saying in the nutshell, it's better that whoever buy the land, they will, develop relationship with a developer like me, and then you go together, try to find financing will be a lot better and easier and maybe lesser rate.
Lesser rate, better terms,
Yeah.
and then you build the trust with those different investors you partner with. Correct. So in creating that clear exit strategy out right in the front, right?
Exactly. So the last question in that regards, Chris. Now you have developed all this relationship. You're going out there. We're talking about all the good scenario. We haven't talked about the bad scenario. Can you really help even if the land is not in Florida? It's in East Coast somewhere in Massachusetts, or what's the jurisdiction?
So my lenders will work on properties up in the Northeast. As far as land is concerned, I would do some research up in that area. I have people down in this area, but that's not a big piece of my wheelhouse. Is more or less writing loans on real property is where I handle it. When I do get those land loans, though, which I do have people coming to me because they want to build their dream house. They don't want to go with a traditional builder, especially down here in Florida. I go to these local community banks, and a lot of them have some really cool and neat programs. And that would be the first thing is, even if you're up there, create your power team, right? Get your contractor, your zoning attorney, your lenders before you even go under contract on any types of properties, and just really make sure you have that power team together, that you're going to make sure you can get the money, what the money will be at. Then with having the contractor or the zoning attorney, you can go to these lenders with something tangible and say, listen, this is what I'm going to do. I've already done some research, and that's going to help you no matter who you go into for a bank, right? If they just see someone flying off the seat of their pants saying, oh, I'm going to buy this property, here's the contract. Well, maybe they do it because they'll have some intel, and maybe you're putting enough money down so the risk makes sense for them. But when you really come into it with a team and you already have your ABC already checked off, you're going to look a lot more lendable to these private investors or these community banks or whatever avenue you choose to go down that gets you to the goal, which is to get the property to develop or whatever the goal is to do on that property.
So, Chris, I tell you, there are so many questions comes to my mind when you are talking, and honestly, I am so glad we connected because, in my opinion, this is going to be super helpful for people because there's a lots of sort of YouTubers out there who are talking about these things only on very surface. Nobody want to really give real knowledge, and honestly, we are peeling the onion, and we haven't even taken the first layer out,
Yeah, we're,
which is
we're
the
still at the upper layer, right? Even there. And we've
right,
gone 10 times
but
deeper than most people, just even at that.
right, but honestly, we want to keep this short and sweet.
Yes.
So I would just say this was even helpful for me because I'm trying to, understand your side of. I'm decent on the development side, but on the financing side, I honestly never thought that you could. At least that's not very common in Northeast. That you could just with 10% down, you could actually buy a land like that. I always bought the land outright and then talk to banks afterwards.
Correct, for the
But
building piece. So then you
right,
you buy that $100,000 property, right? Land. Now you're at least 10% of your $1 million project plus, right?
right,
So you have
right.
some equity into the project right out of the
Right.
gate. I get
Right.
that.
That's the old method, but that's really the gold method, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more about it next time. But at this point, I think we're going to end this show and just thanking Chris. And then I just want to just give you an idea that if you want to find us, Chris, if people want to find you, can you just give just like a 10-second of how to find you? And you can also talk about your show too, because you have a show.
Oh yeah, I mean, so you can find me fairly easy. I'm all over every social media. A lot of the ones that I'm big on would be Facebook, LinkedIn, right under my name. I have a YouTube channel with the Galli team, which is a great resource for mortgages, and I bring on some great guests as well, and we talk about different current events. But really, you can go to thegallyteam.com. You can see my mortgage page, and there's tons of videos and things that you can kind of resources that can help you with any of your real estate needs in a sense. But I really appreciate you, Rich, for taking me on today. This has been a great experience, and I think it's a great asset to many people that are out there that have been sitting on the fence thinking, should I jump into this? I would love to jump into this, but I don't even know where to start. Hopefully this is a great platform to get people off the fence.
Because I'm telling you, I'm very excited and I'm very positive about this. I believe we're going to take this to even TikTok and live and all that because people are going to love this because the talk we're doing, there's so much rubbish out there. And the talk we're talking about real experience. I mean, you have at least 50-year experience in you. And I do the same.
Yeah.
So it's a 100-year experience we are talking and something we are not shy about telling. Because to be honest, we are both at this point not doing this for money. We're doing this so other people can learn. And I will just end this that, hey, guys, this is Rashid, Rich Shaikh. I am a developer, engineer, and, whatever, philanthropist. But if you want to find us, I have a channel as well. And my YouTube channel is Richvmax. My name spell is maybe difficult, Rashid Shaikh, Rashid Shaikh. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok. My TikTok is actually more popular. And we will be putting these things out there and we'll be doing these shows almost few times a week. But this is our first show and let us know how we did and how this is helpful to you. Until that, have a very nice weekend.
You too. Thanks,
Enjoy it.
Rich. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.